This is VK6ARN, Newswest. We are a community organisation and we've been serving up the best amateur radio news in Australia since 1931. Hi there, it's Clinton, VK6FCRC, and welcome to Newswest, the 5th of November 2023. Now on with the show.
Perth Tech was on last weekend, and without being immodest, I'd like to say that it was a resounding success. What made it a success wasn't just the organising that went behind it for more than half a year. That wasn't that difficult because it involved talking to people who want to be part of Perth Tech. The real success of Perth Tech was a willingness of people to contribute. Those who responded to my invitation to deliver presentations strutted their stuff on Saturday and strutted it well. Thanks, folks. From the time people started arriving on Friday afternoon, I was greeted with "what can I do to help" type questions. No matter the task I allocated, be it small or large or several tasks, these people pitched in and did what was needed. The show was ready to go on time at 8:30 a.m. on Saturday. It flowed wonderfully smoothly throughout the day, and there are key people who need to be thanked for that. So here comes the dangerous bit, naming and thanking people, because someone's name will be left off, and for that I apologise now. And right up front for the whole day, Miles, VK6 MLS, a born-again amateur, that is, he returned to the hobby recently, offered to be Master of Ceremonies again and performed the role with class and wit. Mark, VK6 USB, managed the video equipment, assuring me that it was working in spite of my frequent panic attacks. In fact, in the wash-up, I think the only glitch in the video world was my fault. It was a minor one, but a glitch nonetheless. Glenn, VK6 PAW, adopted the audio equipment and stuck with it all day, and he put mics on the presenters as well as whispering things in my ear such as "stay sane, it's going fine." There were lots more. Steve, VK6 SJ, had the laptop, tablet and cash box thrown at him at a moment's notice on Saturday morning, and Steve ran the raffle sales. The rest of the helpers, I struggled to remember who did what, but you all did exactly what was needed, and at the end of the day, there was everyone again helping to pack up, making short work of that. I'm not sure whose idea it was, however. There was a bit of spare time at the end of the program, so we invited club representatives to give a 3-minute off-the-cuff spiel about their club, and that went well, and it was well received. Clubs were invited to set up tables at Perth Tech, and we had responses from Peel Amateur Radio Group and the WAVHF Group. And another table was operated by Greg, VK6 Fox Golf, and he set up a table for his business, Fletcher Communications, with his range of ICOM amateur radio products. I don't think that was a commercial. They won't hear this, but I'm also grateful to the ladies from the Gidgegannup Community Church for taking care of the catering. And of course there was the whole crowd. You were an attentive, engaged audience, and the atmosphere the whole day, indeed the whole weekend, was pleasant and rewarding. Again, my sincere thanks to everyone, those who supported me in the planning stages, those who put their hands up to give talks, to help with things on the day, and those who came along. There were about 48 people there on Saturday. We had 9 caravans and campers on site all weekend. I'm not ready yet to start on Perth Tech 2024, but it's there in the back of my mind. If you want to be part of it, give me a call. I'm Bob, VK6POP.
Hi, this is an article from Barry Burns, VK6ADI, on his introduction into slow scan TV. My first experience to this digital mode was back in the early 70s in Darwin, Northern Territory, when I got an invitation by Doug MacArthur, VK8KK/VK3 Uniform Mike, now Silent Key, to visit his QTH for a demonstration in a new craze in amateur radio called slow scan television. Doug acquired a robot SSTV kit from the USA, setting it up using a 5-inch Crow tube, a 5BP1. He was in contact with a ham in the USA on 20 metres. Doug's transceiver was a Yaesu FTDX 401, very popular in those early days of SSB. I could see a fuzzy image, 36 lines, but identifiable image coming down on the green tube, and I was immediately hooked on this new technology in amateur radio. I acquired a robot kit from the USA and was in the process of assembling it, but never completed the project, as we got a visit from Cyclone Tracy on Christmas Day, and our elevated home with the ham shack underneath in the laundry area did not pass the wind test, We ended up with a large dance floor with an open-air toilet. Our experience surviving Cyclone Tracy will be a subject of a future article, and a part of that amateur radio played in it, and how my family was evacuated to Adelaide by a Galaxy transport aircraft. The underneath shack was holed by flying debris, as the walls were asbestos, which was not prohibited in that period. All my home brew radio equipment was damaged and waterlogged, putting an end to my ham activities. 3 months later, I flew to Adelaide on recovery and recreation leave to spend 2 weeks with my family. While in Adelaide, I bought a Kenwood TS520 transceiver, which had just come out on the market, and took it back to Darwin so I could get back on the ham bands. The Army and other services had finished erecting 3 temporary rooms and a roof so I could live there. No roof over the toilet, so I could sit on the throne and look at the stars. SSTV was put on hold, and got interested in RTTY and acquired a Model 15 teletype machine made up of an interface and back on air with RTTY and SSB with a G5RV antenna. Still had water on site but no power. Hence was given a 3 kilovolt amp generator by the NT Emergency Services. I never got back into SSTV until I left Darwin in 1997. I bought a 100-acre property in Beverley, WA. It was in 1998, after I had established a ham station in Beverley, that I contacted Tony VK6ATI and Ray VK6ET, who were experimenting with analog SSTV using SSTV. This exposure reunited me back into SSTV and loaded the software down to join them on regular skeds on the HF bands. Ray had set up a repeater on SSTV in Clackline near Northam, WA, where we could test our transmitted images and also check for propagation conditions. Over the years, we experimented and used various forms of software from Digitrix, HamPal, and finally settled on EasyPal, as Tony VK6ATI described in his previous article on SSTV a few months back. The WA SSTV group for the past 2 decades have kept regular skeds on various modes and sessions made interesting when an image is sent. The operator talks about the history and contents of the image. Tony VK6ATI is a net controller and has ran and kept the group together for the past 2 decades. Deserves a long service medal, as Tony mentioned. Information can be obtained on our webpage, wasstv.net, for downloading the software, frequency and times our SSTV sessions are run. 7.3, this is Barry VK6ADI.
If you happen to listen to the right part of the 80-metre band on a Tuesday evening, you might hear something that sounds like this. The CQ-QRS net has been running every single Tuesday for the last 2 years and has been unbelievably popular. There are usually half a dozen, and a couple of times up to 18 stations, popping in and out when they can over the 4 or 5 hours. The aim is to encourage new CW operators to have a go at slow CW in a safe and really friendly environment, where slow speed and lots of mistakes are par for the course. It's all about having a go, starting with a basic call sign and RST exchange, then over time getting better and better. The net also attracts its fair share of old-timers who enjoy helping others to have a go, or just to enjoy the banter. So this might be just the opportunity you've been waiting for to have a go at transmitting on CW, or perhaps just to stop the contacts rusting up on your key. Doesn't matter whether you're brand new to the code or if you're an old-timer who would like to have a bit of fun and help encourage new operators by having simple, safe QSOs at their speed, we'd love to have you join in. The net starts at 0900 Zulu every Tuesday on 80 metres between 3540 and 3570 kHz, and there's stations in the west, east and in between listening out for your CQ-QRS call. For more information and to receive our weekly CQ-QRS RagTune newsletter, contact me, Mark, VK6QI, via my email address on qrz.com, or you can email me direct, mark.bosma@icloud.com. That is mark.bosma@icloud.com. Too much switch mode power supply hash on 80 metres? This might be the incentive to do something about it. With a cheap noise canceller costing less than $100, 80 metres could be easier than you think. So once again, Tuesdays from 0900 Zulu until late, between 3540 kHz and 3570 kHz. Cheers from Mark, VK2KI and VK6QI.
Covering Western Australia and beyond, this is Newswest, brought to you by WA Amateur Radio News, on air, online and on demand. This is VK6ARN, and I'm Mark, VK4MHQ.
Hello everyone, this is Clive, VK6 Charlie Sierra Whiskey, reminding you that the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia's November Bulletin goes to air tomorrow. This month, instead of the usual broadcast, we offer another historical broadcast from years past by Alan Doble, VK3AMD, now Silent Key. This time from February 2002. The usual news and information will be broadcast next month. Everyone, RAOTC members and non-members alike, is most welcome to listen to the program and to join in the callbacks afterwards. Some broadcast details. At 8 a.m. local time tomorrow, there's a transmission via digital mobile radio on the VK-DMR network, Talk Group 5. At 9 a.m, either Chris, VK6JI, or Phil, VK6 Golf X-Ray, will transmit the bulletin on 80 metres on 3620 kHz. At 10 a.m, there's a transmission via the Newswest linked repeater system, with a simultaneous transmission on 40 metres on 7088 kHz by either Chris VK6JI or Phil VK6 Golf X-Ray. On Wednesday, October the 4th, we have a D-Star broadcast at 4:30 p.m. WA local time. This will be transmitted via D-Star Reflector 91C and will follow AR Newsline. On Sunday, November the 12th, repeats of the RAOTC Bulletin follow the 160 metre and 40 metre broadcasts of the WIA News. The 80 metre broadcast may not be available during Chris VK6JI's absence. Full details of all transmission times and frequencies are published on the RAOTC website, raotc.org.au, or just Google RAOTC broadcasts. If none of these times suit you, you can download the audio file at any time from today. If you do download the file, some brief feedback comments would be appreciated. The next lunchtime meeting for members and friends of the RAOTC is on Tuesday the 14th of November at the Woodbridge Hotel, 50 East Street, Guildford. We meet at 11:30 for midday lunch. An attractive, well-priced seniors menu is available, which can be viewed online. Everyone's welcome to join in and have an eyeball QSO. There's adequate car parking, but if coming by train, be sure to alight at Guildford East. Repeat, Guildford East Station. Full details are on the club website under the heading Luncheons. Once again, tune in tomorrow for the November broadcast, and we look forward to hearing your call sign in the callbacks. 7-3 from Clive, VK6CSW.
Well, how about this for a radio prophecy from 90 years ago from the Daily News, Monday the 8th of June, 1931, in a column called The Broadcaster by VK6 Foxtrot Golf. And I'm sure that's not Greg from Geraldton, one of his amateur radio predecessors, I'm sure. The trend in amateur radio for the past year or so has undoubtedly been toward the smaller and still smaller sets, whether for receiving or transmitting. On present knowledge of the subject, however, this fetish may be carried too far. For instance, a microscopic transmitting set cannot be expected to carry high power. If it were attempted, it would quickly break down because of inherent weaknesses. but knowledge is quickly growing and new developments are taking place with surprising rapidity. Only recently the cables announced that transmissions had been successfully carried out in England on a wavelength of a fraction of a metre, and it was anticipated that when perfected, conversations between the United Kingdom and the continent could take place with a mere handful of apparatus, and that there was little possibility of congestion of the ether. Another pointer on the present tendency was a message stating that a newspaperman, holding a set in one hand and carrying a few feet of wire on an aerial in the other, was able to go to one side of a large aerodrome and talk to listeners at the other side. It will be remembered too that an English amateur has been experimenting with a pocket set which could be carried by a policeman who could listen in while on beat to instructions from his head office. Then there's a heading, something revolutionary expected. All this information about small sets, micro rays and the system dealt with in this column last week of directional radio using telephone posts as holders of relay stations shows the great advances that have been made on present knowledge. Is it not reasonable to postulate the belief that while all this advance along accepted lines is being made, that something sensational and simple and providing the same ends but by different means may be anticipated? Upon analysing the present-day methods of transmission and reception, it will be found that for long-distance transmissions a fairly large amount of power has to be expended. This energy is dissipated in the ether to be picked up by receiving sets. The amount of energy which reaches an aerial, even if directional radio is adopted, is microscopic. A broadcasting station may put 15 kilowatts into its aerial, but the share of it received by the listener may only be a 10 millionth part of the original power. This would suggest a huge waste, and yet the apparatus is sufficiently delicate to receive it and render the program so broadcast completely intelligible. It would appear to the writer that the time is not far distant when this disparity of ratio between energy transmitted and received will be reduced, and the system of aerials, both transmitting and receiving, would suggest that some improvement may be made here. Perhaps someday we will do without aerials altogether. The human body has wavelength. This is not so far away as may be thought as first, but Mr. Robert R. Piccarini, a member of the Institute of Radio Engineers in England, recently told how he discovered that the human body was a transmitting and receiving set. I was experimenting in 1924, he said, with wavelengths of from 3 to 5 metres. I noticed certain physical symptoms which I noted in my logbook. I was evidently transmitting on a wavelength close to that of the human body, a wavelength which has now been established by physicists as being around 3 metres. This discovery has been utilised in Germany for the investigation of healing processes. Who will say that in a few years we'll be able to carry in our pockets a complete radio transmitter, receiver and televisor, so that we may talk with our friends no matter where we be, and will see them and they see us. Alas, then, for the man who tells his wife he is detained at the office, when in reality he has the typist to dinner at the fashionable hotel. Well, my friends, how true was that? And that's from 1931.
This is VK6ARN, and you're listening to Newswest.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. All antennas have a radiation pattern that charts on a sphere where it radiates more and where it radiates less than the theoretical isotropic radiator. This comparison is expressed as dBi antenna gain. There is a fundamental concept in antenna design called reciprocity. Essentially, it means that transmit and receive behavior of an antenna is identical. In other words, the radiation pattern of an antenna applies for both transmitting and receiving of signals. Unfortunately, this does not mean that if two stations are communicating and one can hear the other, the reverse is also true. Let me explain why. Let's set the scene. Imagine two stations, me, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima Alpha Bravo, at Lake Mungar in Perth, Western Australia, and Charles, November Kilo 8 Oscar, in the Lake of the Ozarks State Park within the Ozark Mountains in central Missouri. We're both on the 10-metre HF band, and in this story I finally managed to learn Morse code, and I'm talking to Charles, Mind you, Charles apparently does have a microphone, so perhaps this might actually happen one day. To simplify things, we both have the same antenna, the same radio, the same power level, we both love low power or QRP operation, and while we're keeping it simple, we have the same ground conductivity and we're both experiencing the same very low noise levels. While we're constructing this fantasy, the communication paths for both our stations are identical. Note that I said paths. More on that shortly. In that situation, both Charles and I have the same experience. We can hear each other at the same level. Our S-meter has the same reading. And apart from my current inability to actually use Morse code, our readability is identical. You might think that this is reciprocity, but it's not as simple as that. I'm parked near a lake in the middle of a city, and often other vehicles come and go. One new arrival has a solar panel on the roof with a noisy inverter, and suddenly the local noise in my location jumps from S0 to S6. The vehicle arrives whilst I'm transmitting, so at first nothing happens. Charles continues to hear my signal at the same level, and at my end I'm blissfully unaware of any change. Until I stop transmitting, when I hear the noise. Meanwhile, Charles starts his transmission, and I cannot hear him because the local noise in my location is louder than his wanted signal. At this point, Charles still has the ability to hear me, but I can no longer hear him, even though our equipment is identical. The only change is the local noise floor at my location, which interferes with my ability to receive the signals coming from Charles. This means that I can still send, again, local QRM, and I can do that as often as I want. Charles will hear this without any issue, but I won't hear his reply until the local noise stops. What this highlights is that two-way communication between two stations involves two signal paths. They might, or might not, follow the same journey through the ionosphere and be between two identical antennas. But the experience for either station can be, and almost always is, completely different. Because the ability to transmit isn't affected by local noise at the transmitter, it doesn't figure into the total path loss when you're calculating it for the receiving station. However, when the roles are reversed, it does. So, when you're receiving, you need to take into account your local noise. But when you're transmitting, you don't. So, when Charles is transmitting to me, I need to take into account my local noise and ignore his. And when I'm transmitting to Charles, he needs to take into account his local noise, but not mine. This is how you can have so-called alligator stations, all mouth, no ears. The station is likely using high power with a high-gain antenna in a noisy environment. This means that everyone can hear them, but because their local noise is so high, they can often only hear other alligators, but not the rest of the world who can perfectly hear them. If you encounter a station on air that keeps calling CQ, regardless of how many people are calling back, that's an alligator. So the takeaway is that even if you can hear a station, it doesn't mean that they can hear you, and the reverse is also true. You can be transmitting and heard all over the place, but if you're in a high noise environment, you might not be able to hear them. It's one reason that QRP stations prefer to work in low noise environments, where they can hear many more stations. It reminds me of a funny story told by Wally, Victor Kilo 6 Yankee Sierra, now Silent Key. In his early amateur radio days, he operated from Cockatoo Island, an island off the north coast of Western Australia near Yampi Sound, which is where his call sign came from. With a new radio and transverter for 6 meters, Wally had been calling CQ for weeks, but nobody would talk to him. Occasionally he'd hear a faint voice in the background. Meanwhile, it transpired that amateurs across Japan were getting upset that he wasn't responding to their 20 and 40 over 9 signal reports. His transmission was getting out just fine. His receiver wasn't working nearly as well. Turns out that during manufacturing, a pin on the back of his transverter hadn't been soldered correctly. Once he fixed that, he worked 150 Japanese stations on the first day, and a lifelong love of the 6-meter band was born. In other words, just because someone can hear you doesn't mean that you can hear them. Sometimes it's noise, and sometimes it's a faulty connector. I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima Alpha Bravo. Lima.
This is Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH, Editor-in-Chief of Amateur Radio Magazine. Here's a chance in a lifetime. Sign up to use VK90AR, the special event call sign celebrating 90 years of Amateur Radio Magazine. That call sign won't be coming around again, not even if we are still publishing in another 90 years. A historic call sign for a historic occasion. Last month, Amateur Radio Magazine reached the milestone of being published continuously since October 1933. That's why we're marking the occasion by arranging keen operators to get on air and make some noise with VK90AR. With the solar cycle really crackling right now, here's an opportunity to add to the noise on the bands. The call sign is for use by any member of the WIA as well as any affiliated club. Signing up to use VK90AR is a simple process. Just apply on the WIA website online event calendar where you can book a roster to suit yourself. If you already know where the online event calendar is, jump to it, or go to the website address in the text version of this broadcast. It's also in a news item featured on the WIA website homepage. VK90AR expires on 31st December 2023. So get online, book a roster and don't miss out. You might like to use VK90AR on AM on 7125 kHz as a nod to our heritage. How about it then? I'm Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH for VK1WIA News.
This is Newswest, your amateur radio news on VK6ARN, originating on the Newswest linked repeater network and HF relays.
Good morning, this is Roy, VK6X-Ray Victor, with this week's helpline, the 5th of November 2023. Nothing new to report this week, so all I can do is repeat what I said last week. Here it goes again. First off today, I have Tim, VK6 Echo India, is looking for some cable. 20 metres thereabouts of Lima Mike Romeo 240, if you would have some lying about. Tim would like to hear from you. That's VK6 Echo India. His email address, vk6echoindia@bigpond.com. Next item for sale is a Tango Sierra 590 Sierra Kenwood transceiver with a Tango Sierra power supply. $1,550 is the asking price for that. There's also a Yaesu Fox Tango 2000 200 watt transceiver. $1,550 for that also. There's a Fox Papa 8 extension speaker. $150 for that. And there's also a Daiwa 5204 antenna switch. 4-port model, $50. There's a Revox Whiskey 5000 SWR bridge, 1.8 to 60 megs, $80. There's a Fox Tango 200 transceiver with Fox Papa 200 power supply, $150 the pair. And there's an MFJ 259 Bravo antenna analyzer, $150. There's a TH3 Mark III high-gain tri-band antenna, negotiable price on that. There's also a rotator, a Charlie Delta Romeo Ham M, negotiable. There's a tubular 40-foot telescopic self-supporting mast, negotiable price. Homebrew HF amplifier deck, set up for a 4-1000 GG tube, negotiable. And you may contact Nora Jackson between the hours of 10 and 12 today, and the mobile number is 0438352667. That's 0438352667, or the landline is 63635350. Again, 63635350. Next item comes from Stephen, VK6 Uniform Tango. Still has a whole lot of transceivers and spare parts, valves, generators and power supplies. Too much to mention here. But if you would like to give him a call or send him an email, his email address is stephentango@westnet.com.au. I spell Sierra Tango Echo Papa Hotel Echo November Tango @westnet.com.au, or the mobile number 0401 804 166. 0401 804 166. VK6 Alpha Delta India still has a microphone, a amplified desk microphone, $50. and you may contact Barry. His email address is bravo.juliet.burns, that's Bravo Uniform Romeo November Sierra, at bigpond.com. bravo.juliet.burns at bigpond.com. That's all I have for you today, and if you have any ideas for next week, please contact me. The address roy.watkins at bigpond.com. roy.watkins at bigpond.com. Thank you once again for listening. 7-3.
Hi there, it's Clinton, VK6FCRC, back with you. And did you know that Newswest is now on YouTube? Type in youtube.com/@Newswest weekly podcast Kilo Zulu 7 Yankee Charlie. Oh, and before I go, I'd like to thank those watching on YouTube or ATV, the readers, and you for listening. I'd also like to thank our team, the broadcasters, and those submitting content each week. Please stand by now for callbacks after the broadcast, or head over to the vk6.net website and fill out the forms so we know how many people are listening each week.